everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Proline. And it's the tournament edition. Now, we don't have specifics yet for these tournaments, but we know what's going to be taking place, conference tournaments, and then the big dance itself. And there are some pretty good betting tips to talk about that we are going to try and pass along. Doesn't guarantee that they're going to put you in the winner's circle, but it'll certainly help you, give you a better chance of covering the spread in these contests and making some money. That's Jim Feist. I'm Dave Cokin. Well, it is tournament time, and there are a lot of different ways to go into these. It's make no mistake, it isn't the same as the regular season at any level. Jim, it's a whole different ballgame. It is literally a new season. For teams that haven't had a good regular season, it's the chance to get hot for a 3 or 4 day period and win their way into the NCAA tournament. For others who know they're going to be in the NCAA tournament, sometimes the intensity level isn't there. You really have to approach these games differently, and you have to approach them differently from a depth standpoint as well, because unlike the regular season where teams are playing, a couple of games a week, these tournaments, in the SEC, you could have teams playing as much as 4 games in 4 days. Same thing in the Big East. And if a team doesn't have depth, they're not going to be able to withstand that. So we thought we'd talk about, a bunch of different things that can aid you in making money in these tournaments. Obviously, what will aid you the most is if you call us, because then you'll be getting professional advice on the actual games. But if you're going to do your own handicapping, a lot of ways to go about it. You want to get one rolling, Jim? We've got a bunch that we can pass along here.
Well, Dave, you're 100% right. Let's take, for example, some of the hottest teams in college basketball right now. Your Indiana's, your Michigan State out of that one conference, Georgetown, Syracuse, Connecticut, not so much, but a little bit.
They're not eligible anyway.
Marquette. Well, that's true. Marquette, Villanova, situations like that, Florida. These teams all know that they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. They know they're going to be in there. Those 68 teams, those names will be there. There's other teams that could get there, but only if they can win their conference tournament. And then there's other teams that are pretty good teams, and they're, let's call them bubble teams. If they don't win their conference tournament, there's going to be a big question whether to get invited or not. So the pressure is really on those middle-of-the-road teams because they're good. They've had a good season. Now, they may get into the NIT, the other tournaments that are out there, but they want to be in the NCAA. Everybody wants a chance at national championship. But the bottom-rung teams, the teams that are in the conference tournaments that are 7-21, that have really stunk up all year long, they got a chance. I mean, you go out there on the floor, you got 5-on-5, anything can happen. So I approach these conference tournaments with a little bit of a side look at these big favorites because they don't really need to do anything.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, they've already beaten the team they're playing once and in some cases twice on the year. So that sets up a single or a double revenge situation. A lot of people get really hung up on that. Revenges don't work unless the team has the ability to do something about getting the revenge. But that's where our job comes in. So there's a whole new season right now coming up. We got the end of the regular season play, which ending very soon. We got your conference tournaments, and then another season after that, which is the postseason in the one of the various tournaments that are out there. I think there's 4 of them, right, Dave? 4 different tournaments?
Yeah, but there's only one that matters. And that's the thing. In the smaller tournaments, the NIT and whatever, the CBI, CIT, those tournaments that have been run, the CBI and CIT were tournaments where literally the teams have to pay to be in the tournament. Strange concept. At least the NIT, you get invited in. But in those tournaments, you have to try and determine what a team's interest is and whether they even want to be there. Because in a lot of cases, they don't. Now, good teams that just missed the NCAA tournament might end up in the NIT. If they get off to a good start, then they get interested because it's like, well, what the hell, let's win the thing. So you can pick up steam with some favorites in that tournament as time goes on. But as far as the NCAA tournament goes, well, one quick note, I just wanted to reflect on what you said about top seeds in conference tournaments maybe not being good bets. If ever you wanted a classic example of it, that Kentucky team last year was one of the best teams we've really, in terms of talent, it's one of the best teams of all time in college basketball. Freshmen dominated, and yet nobody could get in their way, and they were a monster. But if you look back at the SEC tournament, they lost to Vanderbilt in the final, and it was clear they really didn't care about the game. Not to a great extent. I think, it would have been nice to win it, I suppose, but the underdog wanted that game a lot more. You're going to see situations like that with teams, particularly teams that are likely going to be number one seeds in the big dance. If they've got that number one seed locked up, you don't want to be on that team in the conference tournament. There's just not a whole lot to play for. And, all the conference pride thing, sorry, apparently it's not that big because we've seen this happen over and over again. As far as the actual tournament itself, these are some numbers that you can kind of file away. And it doesn't mean that you automatically just bet the other side or just bet off these numbers, but it certainly is a handicapping factor. Double-digit favorites. 66, the dogs, double-digit dogs, I should say. This is since the beginning of this century. 66, 55, and 3. Now, that's not a massive percentage, but it does tell you something. It's a small profit. It's actually a serious loser. You turn those numbers around, 55, 66, and 3. That's a lot of money down the drain if you're laying double-digit favorites in the NCAA tournament. It's just not a great bet. It makes sense, Jim. I mean, these teams that are double-digit dogs, unless they're really from one of the really bad conferences, they're oftentimes from pretty good mid-level conferences, and they're coming in with a chip on their shoulder, with something to prove. Those are dangerous teams to lay points against.
Absolutely nothing to lose. They know they're not supposed to win, and the favorite, in most cases, take them lightly, and they don't really get serious about it. They figure this is a walkover. Who wants to play Biloxi State? You know what I'm saying? And I'm laying 24 points today. Whoa, this is easy. We'll play half the game, and we'll sit on the bench and let the subs play the rest of it. Not so much. Sometimes these other teams come in. They're definitely more motivated, and sometimes they get hot. I mean, the game is simple. I mean, if you make your shots and you play a little defense, you can turn a bad night into a very good one, and very quickly. So yeah, I look at the dogs early. As the tournament goes on, we're talking about the big dance, the NCAA tournament. As the tournament goes on, these big dogs don't do as well. If they happen to make it down the road into the Sweet 16, they don't do as well because now the slipper doesn't fit anymore. And now the other teams are now taking them more seriously too. So and the coaching staffs now focus on them, and they find their flaws, and they find a way to take advantage of those flaws. So the dogs, those big dogs, as you get late, Sweet 16 and further, they don't do that well. Early, they do.
We got some numbers on that. In fact, the last 4 tournaments, double-digit seeds, only 2-9 straight up in the round of 16. The average margin of victory in the 8 losses to single-digit seeds over the past 3 years, 19.2 points. That's a lot. The closest of these games, the closest of them, was in 2008, Western Kentucky. They were 12. They played UCLA, which was a 1, and they lost by 10. That's the closest of those matchups. The biggest blowout, by the way, was the next year, Louisville versus Arizona, and Pitino and Louisville, 103-64. That's a pretty easy winner.
The thing about that is, Dave, Arizona's not really an off-the-wall team.
No, but they weren't that
like
good.
They're talking about North Dakota State or something. I mean, they are from one of the power conferences, and they just didn't show up. But obviously, the talent level was way different.
The number 1 seed Now, they're often laying a lot of points right out of the gate. And, I hear this a lot. It's like, the number one seed, well, they're going to be overconfident. They know they're going to beat this 16. You take the dog, because the dog, they got nothing to lose. And, well, yeah, they actually do. The number one seed in the first round is 15-11-1 against the spread. Now, again, that's not a monster winning record, but it tells you that's a bit of a myth out there that these teams that are number one seeds are going to coast against number 16 seeds. Apparently they don't. 15-11-1 is not bad. It's 57%. It's a reasonably short sample. We're talking about 7 years there, but it's still more winners than losers betting on the number one seed there. To me, those number one seeds, no matter who they're, look, they all know that no number one seed has ever lost to a 16. And if you want to get it focused,
I'd like to interject something here, Dave.
Yeah.
The odds makers years ago were getting pummeled with these 16 against ones early, and the 16s were doing very well against the number.
Massive
so what
numbers.
they did is they shaved the numbers down.
Yep.
So the public who said, okay, always bet the 16s against the ones in the first round because it's money in the bank. Well, at a real number, I mean, I'm talking about a legitimate number, point spread I'm talking about. Yes, they were. But the odds makers don't like getting beat up either. So they changed the numbers. Instead of laying 24, they're laying 16. Public's coming in and taking the 16. But the number really shouldn't be 16. It should be 24. So they win the game by 20. Now they cover the spread where they really should have lost to the spread. So this is where I want to get back to tips on handicapping. At our site, JimFeist.tv, there's a part on there where you can go and look at the fast facts reports. Each day the matchups are there, and you can see what the legitimate line should be. There's two sets of numbers on the left side that give you a pretty good indication of what they should be. And sometimes those numbers are very different, which indicates that they might have played well in the early part of the season and poor late, and then those two numbers don't match together. So you'll see a 14 and a 6. Well, that's because their talent level has either improved or diminished over time, and so you have to then look at current form. But you got to know what the number is. Like, if a team comes in, they're a 10-point favorite, I might like the favorite. But if they're a 16-point favorite, I might like the dog. So you have to know what you're doing. You just can't bet teams because they're a 16 seed against a 1. You got to know what the right number is.
Right. And, here's, to add to that, if you go back some years, the 1-16 matchups, you had lines of like 38. I mean, massive numbers. The 16s are better than they used to be. It's just the game has changed from that standpoint. The other thing is that number ones are now well aware that no one has ever lost to a 16. Nobody wants to be the first to go down that road. So there's some focus in the first round. You can have Kentucky playing against Monmouth or whatever. It doesn't matter. Not this year. I'm just pulling any year out of an example. Big time powerhouse against who is that? Who is that? It's still pretty good. So you're right. The numbers have been adjusted, and it's actually become more profitable to bet on the number one seed in the first round. A couple other things to look at. This actually goes back to conference tournament play. This is one of the things I like to do. It's a betting tip, if you will, that I don't follow all the time, but it's something that I'll look at first. If an underdog gets started off well in a conference tournament, watch out, because the momentum can be huge, and it's not a bad idea to get on underdogs that won their first game outright in the conference tournament and try and play them through the tournament. Now, again, I'm not saying I do it all the time. There are no blanket rules in handicapping, but it's an avenue I'll go down first, because the most I can do is lose one game with the team. I might be able to pick up 3 wins with the team. That's not a bad option. It's kind of like the new coach angle that people have become very familiar with in pro sports, where you get on the new coach when he takes over the team. The most you can lose is one bet, but if he wins, you keep playing him until they lose. And there's been a lot of times where a team goes off and wins 4 or 5 in a row before they finally lose under the new coach. Well, that's the idea with playing streaks. It doesn't matter what sport it's in. How many times have either one of us gotten on a streak with a baseball team, and let's just keep playing them. You can play them 5, 6, 7 times in a row until sometimes, and really pile up some massive profits. So playing on streaks, not a bad idea come tournament time, especially if it's a lower seed that's going to continue to get points. But that doesn't work so much in the NCAA tournament. And if that sounds confusing, sorry. But the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament are completely different animals. Jim, I don't handicap them at all similarly because of the...
Well, one of the things, Dave, that I'll point out, the difference between conference tournaments and the NCAA or NIT, et cetera, well, the NIT, they do play some home court games. But yes, in the NCAA tournament, they're playing on supposedly neutral floors. Sometimes there's floors that favor one team or the other, but it's generally speaking not the home floor of anybody. In the conference tournaments, they're playing on a floor that they've probably played on before, not always, because we don't have the home and road scenario in the conferences that we used to when you play the team on the road, then play them at home. A lot of times you go through the whole season, just play them once or not at all. But there's more familiarity because they know the players a little bit, they know the coaching tendencies a little bit, and they know the floor a little bit. So it's different in the conference tournaments from the standpoint of playing on neutral floors. Now, in conference tournaments, I can look at, and you should look at, how do teams do when they play on the road and how do they do at home? Some teams are like 2-9 against the spread at home against the spread. Well, generally speaking, they're winning, but they're just not. What's that?
UNLV is a dramatic example.
Exactly. But they don't do very well on the road.
Right, dominant at home.
But there's some teams play very well on the road, very poor at home, and some reverse it. It's the opposite. So you need to look at that from the in a conference tournament. You need to look at that specifically. In the NCAAs, when both teams are actually playing away from home, it's not a bad thing to look at how they do on the road. Yeah. How do they do when they're away from home, when they don't have their home floor, the familiarity of the basket, the line of sight, all the things, the reflections, everything that they got when they're at home, they don't have anymore. So how do teams do when they're on the road? Now, that's not always accurate because a lot of times a home team advantage is really the road team's disadvantage situation. So, but it's another way of looking at it. Neutral games. Earlier in the season, sometimes they play neutral games. How did they do in those games? Now, granted, teams 30 games ago are different than they are today because they've made coaching changes, player changes, injuries, etc. They're more experienced. Freshmen become almost sophomores during that period of time. So there's a lot of factors. There is no true system that I've ever seen that actually works over a long period of time. It just takes a lot of hard work. But at least with this conversation, you got some ideas of what to look at.
Right.
This is what we do every day, which is why people call us, because they got their jobs, and this is our job.
All right, so let's do our Twitter question of the week, Twitter/Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at JimFeistSports. Friend us at Facebook at ProlineTV. And by the way, if we use your question, you get put into a $100 a drawing to win $100 worth of plays from a handicapper of your choice. This must have come in on Twitter because it doesn't have a name on it. March Tourney betting teams like the Super Bowl. Oh, okay. March Tourney betting seems like the Super Bowl stretch out every day in Las Vegas for a week. Sorry about that. I'm reading this verbatim. Has it been like this for decades? I think what the person was trying to ask. 140 characters can sometimes cause questions to come out a little bit garbled. I think whoever sent this in is talking about how it's become such a big event out here, and just comparing it to the Super Bowl, it's massive. It's the second biggest event of the season. There are people now who a lot of people come out here for the Super Bowl because if you can't go to the Super Bowl itself, Las Vegas is the second best place to be. For the NCAA tournament, the Thursday, Friday opening rounds, it's like the Super Bowl out here, Jim. I mean, it is unbelievable how many people come out here to go to their, the sports book of their choice, camp out there all day long, bet all the games, and just turn it into a party. It's actually, I think it's more fun and more of a real gambling atmosphere, way more than the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Super Bowl gets more money, but a lot of $5 bettors out here for the Super Bowl. They're out here to do other things, to go to the celebrity parties and things like that, because that's what Las Vegas is all about that weekend. The tournaments, it's not that kind of an atmosphere. This is where you can go to the sports book and you've got, I'll use the LVH, which used to be called the Hilton, as an example, because it's a huge sports book, massive in terms of square footage. That place on the first 2 days of the conference of the NCAA tournament, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And it's just betting all day long. Bettors of all sizes, too. $5, $10 bettors, parlay bettors, big bettors, who don't play during the year but come out here with thousands of dollars, and they're firing on these games. I think it's something everybody should experience once. It's so much fun and excitement. Even for those of us who've been gambling for a lot of years, that's still one of the coolest experiences around, to be at to me, what is a true event, and that's the first 2 days of the tournament here in Las Vegas.
The tournament goes on for weeks, and a lot of people come out here and they stay for weeks. And with the Super Bowl is a weekend, and and I know there's only so many rooms in Las Vegas, and they're filled. But when the NCAA starts off, those rooms are filled for a longer period of time. Yeah. So the hotels actually do better rooms and food and all the other things that they take part in. And it is more, to me, it's more exciting, because when you walk into these sports books, like Dave said, you can't even move. It's that, and the Hilton Superbook is just massive, and wow, you can't move. It's that packed in there. It's like trying to go to the bathroom at the Super Bowl, which I've been to 11 of those. It's impossible to get to the window. It's amazing.
I'm going to throw in a plug. They're not advertising with us or something like that, but I got to throw in this plug. The Cantor Racing Sports, one of their properties is the Palms. That sports book, the big screen in there is the most amazing. I've never seen anything like it. It's this huge, huge screen. It's like a movie theater screen. And the picture quality is incredible. I mean, you'll think you're on the court with the players. It's not a huge sports book, so, unlike the Hilton, you better get there early if you want a seat in the Palms. It's not a big place. But that is, I've never seen, it's the best place I've ever been to watch a game because of the size of the screen. Have you been over there since Cantor?
No, I have not been, and it's really far away. I could walk there from this office.
I know.
But no, I have not been in there. But, Cantor has done a lot of great things here in this town. They came here, and they've made a lot of innovations, and they're really improving the sports betting market here. It's by just adding new things, and maybe they're not accepted by the mainstream guys that are here. That's possible, but anytime you make changes, you got to break a few eggs. So, but they have made some pretty good innovations.
They have, and by the way, I like books that will take a stance on a number. They are, not across the board, but the fact is that they're doing things kind of like Pinnacle did for years. Pinnacle. Part of the reason I always thought they were the best online book, and you can't bet with Pinnacle legally, obviously. would take a stance on a number, if they like a side in a game, you could see it. I mean, they would have their number different from other books. Cantor's kind of done the same thing. I like that, when books are willing to gamble a little bit. That's pretty cool. All right. It just, by the way, it keeps getting better and better locally. Cantor, William Hill has now made a big impact here. And these are outstanding companies. I know for the independents in town, it's a little tough to keep up with them. But I think the sports betting opportunities better than they've been in a long time for local Las Vegans. And now you can get the apps and bet on your phone from any place in the state of Nevada. It's nice. Modern technology is definitely helping out the better. All right. I think that's it. Let me tell you about it. We have some tournament packages to tell you about. And they're very inexpensive. You're going to get a lot of plays. And you will definitely improve your chances of winning. And I'm not going to tell you, neither Jim or myself believes in this, we hit 80% that crap. We don't say that because nobody ever does, all right? It's the one thing if you archive, we get accused of a lot of things, all right? But if you archive, go back through the archives on Proline, and this goes back years and years and years, doing the show on USA Network, one thing you've never heard, ever, is guys saying, yeah, we're hitting 93% for the season, 78% for the season. You know why? Because that doesn't happen. But we do win, and we put money in your pockets. That's the idea. You have reasonable expectations. You'll be real happy with these packages that we're offering. You'll make money, and it won't cost you a lot. My March Tournament Under the Hat package, this is all my action and Under the Hat releases for March and April in college basketball, right through the Final Four, and the title game, obviously. Everything for $29 with this video special only. Special number to call, 1-866-841-1665. That's 1-866-841-1665. Just $29. A lot of plays, okay? It's not like you're not going to call in and we don't really have more than like one or two of those a week. Action Under the Hat plays, I have more of those than anything else. So when you call in for this, you're going to be in action every day in the conference tournaments, in the NCAA tournaments, in the NIT, etc. $29, it's an absolutely great deal. Take advantage of it. 1-866-841-1665. And Jim, same thing for you. Absolutely terrific offer.
Absolutely, Dave. I got a March Madness package available right through April 8th. Just call. It's $19. Call 1-866-841-1655. $19 through April 8th. And like Dave, there'll be a lot of action throughout that period. 1-866-841-1655. And Dave, talking about 80%, heck, when you're 1-0 on the night, you're 100%.
That's right. That's right. And I am. And again, I wasn't 100%.
No, you're right, Dave. You're right. The promises of 80-90% are ridiculous. Really, sports betting is about two different ways. You can have a shotgun approach where you bet a lot of different games, or you can have the selectivity approach where you just bet bigger money on a few games. And that's why we offer ratings on our games. If you're just a player that likes big games, you bet that. If you like them all, you bet them all, and you bet them at different amounts. So that's what we do.
Call us instead, okay? We'll actually win for you. All right. I think that's it. Let's get the games going.